The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Blackwood mansion as Sophie Matthews adjusted the collar of her borrowed uniform and checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. At 26, she had spent the past 4 years building a career as a pediatric nurse, but today she found herself preparing to work as a housekeeper to help her younger sister Maria, who had called in sick with the flu. "You do not have to do this, Sophie," Maria had said weakly from her bed that morning. "I can probably manage to work today." "Absolutely not," Sophie had replied firmly. "You have a fever of 102 degrees and you need to rest. Besides, how hard can housekeeping be? I clean up after sick children all day at the hospital." What Sophie had not anticipated was the sheer grandeur of the Blackwood estate, or the meticulous standards that Maria had warned her about. As she made her way through the ornate rooms, Sophie tried to remember all the specific instructions Maria had given her about Mr. Blackwood's preferences and routines. Alexander Blackwood was the 34-year-old CEO of a multinational investment firm, a widower who had inherited both his father's business acumen and his mother's appreciation for elegant living. According to Maria, he was demanding but fair, wealthy beyond imagination, and completely devoted to his 6-year-old son Oliver, who had not spoken a word since his mother's death in a car accident 18 months earlier. Sophie was dusting the enormous living room when she heard the soft patter of small feet on the marble floor. She turned to see a little boy with dark hair and serious gray eyes watching her from the doorway. He was impeccably dressed in shorts and a polo shirt, but something about his stillness suggested a child who had learned to be very quiet in a very large house. "Hello there," Sophie said gently, kneeling down to his level. "You must be Oliver. I am Sophie. I am helping out today while Maria is not feeling well." Oliver studied her face with the careful attention that children give to new adults, but he did not respond verbally. Instead, he clutched a small stuffed elephant closer to his chest and continued to watch her work. Sophie had extensive experience with children who had experienced trauma, and she recognized the signs immediately. This was not a shy child or a rude child. This was a child who had retreated into silence as a way of protecting himself from a world that had become unpredictable and painful. "That is a very nice elephant," Sophie continued, maintaining the same gentle tone she used with her young patients. "Does he have a name?" Oliver shook his head but remained in the doorway, clearly interested in this new person who spoke to him directly rather than about him. Sophie pulled a piece of paper from her pocket and quickly folded it into a paper airplane. "Would you like to see something fun?" she asked, sailing the airplane gently toward Oliver. For the first time, Oliver's serious expression lightened slightly as he caught the paper plane and examined its construction with obvious interest. "Would you like to learn how to make one?" Sophie asked. "I could teach you while I work." Oliver nodded enthusiastically, the first real sign of engagement Sophie had seen from him. For the next hour, as Sophie continued her cleaning duties, she taught Oliver how to fold paper airplanes, showed him how to make different designs for different flight patterns, and encouraged him to test his creations in the spacious hallway. She was careful not to push him to speak, instead creating an environment where communication could happen naturally if he chose. "Oliver seems quite taken with you," a deep voice said from behind her. Sophie turned to see a tall man in a white dress shirt and dark trousers watching from the foyer. Even without Maria's description, she would have recognized Alexander Blackwood immediately. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge, but his eyes held the particular exhaustion of a single parent who was trying to be everything to a grieving child. "Mr. Blackwood," Sophie said, standing quickly. "I am Sophie Matthews, Maria's sister. She is ill today, so I am covering her shift. I hope that is acceptable." Alexander studied her face, noting the way Oliver had moved closer to her when he entered the room, and the small pile of paper airplanes that suggested his son had been engaged in actual play for the first time in months. "Are you a professional housekeeper, Miss Matthews?" he asked. Sophie felt heat rise in her cheeks. "No, sir. I am a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital. I am just helping my sister so she can recover from the flu." Alexander looked at his son, who was now tugging gently on Sophie's uniform to get her attention, and felt something shift in his chest. For 18 months, he had watched Oliver retreat further and further into himself, barely interacting with the parade of nannies and caregivers Alexander had hired to help. "Oliver likes you," Alexander observed. "He is a wonderful little boy," Sophie replied. "Very intelligent and creative. He built some excellent paper airplanes." Alexander noticed that Sophie spoke directly about Oliver's positive qualities, rather than commenting on his silence, which suggested she understood something about children that many adults missed. "Miss Matthews, may I ask you something?" Alexander said. "How long have you been working with children?" 4 years as a pediatric nurse, but I have been around children my whole life," Sophie replied. "I have 3 younger siblings, and I have always loved working with kids." Alexander made a decision that surprised even himself. "Miss Matthews, would you be interested in a different kind of position? I have been looking for someone to help with Oliver's care, someone who understands children and could provide some stability in his routine." Sophie looked at Oliver, who was now standing close enough to lean against her leg, and felt her heart catch. "Mr. Blackwood, I have a career at the hospital. I cannot just abandon my patients." "I am not asking you to abandon anything," Alexander replied. "I am asking if you would consider a position that would allow you to use your skills with children in a different way. The salary would be significantly higher than what you make at the hospital, and you would be helping one child who needs specialized attention." Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing the unexpected offer. "Mr. Blackwood, why would you make such an offer to someone you just met?" Alexander looked at his son, who had not shown this much interest in another person since his mother's death, and felt a mixture of hope and desperation. "Because in the past hour, you have accomplished something that dozens of trained professionals have not been able to do," he said simply. "You made my son smile." 3 months later, Sophie sat in the garden of the Blackwood estate, helping Oliver with his reading while Alexander worked from his home office nearby. Oliver had not yet returned to speaking, but he had begun communicating more through drawing and play, and his nightmares had decreased significantly. "Sophie," Alexander said one evening as they watched Oliver play with his collection of paper airplanes, "I need to tell you something." Sophie looked at him expectantly. "When I hired you, I thought I was finding someone to take care of Oliver," Alexander continued. "I did not realize I was finding someone who would take care of both of us." Sophie felt her pulse quicken at the warmth in his voice. "Alexander, what are you saying?" "I am saying that you have given us back something I thought we had lost forever," he replied. "You have given us back the feeling that we are a family, not just 2 people sharing a house." Sophie looked at this man who had started as her employer and had become something much more important, and realized that covering her sister's shift had led to discoveries about love and purpose that she never could have planned. "Alexander, I think what we found was that the best families are not always the ones we are born into, but the ones we choose to build together. Sometimes the most important career changes happen not because of careful planning or ambitious goals, but because we show up to help someone we love and discover that the path we thought we were on was actually leading us exactly where we needed to be."